March 17, 1943, Tirpitzufer 7678 Berlin. The file hit the mahogany desktop with such tremendous impact that coffee from Admiral Wilhelm Canaris's delicate porcelain cup splattered across intelligence documents, papers that, if the Gestapo ever found them, would have guaranteed his execution. "This can't be real," he muttered. "The Americans must be passing us fabricated information through the double agents we've turned." From the towering windows of Abwehr headquarters, Canaris gazed out toward the Landwehr Canal, the very spot where Rosa Luxemburg's corpse had been disposed of 24 years before. Now serving as the head of German military intelligence, his hands shook as they gripped a report that didn't just contradict Nazi propaganda. It challenged the very mathematical calculations upon which German victory depended. Based on intercepted messages and field reports from operatives still active in Mexico City, Ford Motor Company's massive Willow Run facility was churning out one complete B-24 Liberator bomber every single hour. Think about that for a moment. The B-24 Liberator consisted of 1.5 million individual parts, required 450,000 rivets, and brought together 30,000 separate components to create an 18-ton aircraft. And these were rolling off the assembly line faster than Germany could manufacture a simple Kubelwagen military vehicle. Major Friedrich Wilhelm Heinz stood rigidly at attention in front of Canaris's desk, having verified the intelligence 3 separate times. The figures hadn't changed. What neither officer could have known in that moment was that they were witnessing the beginning of the most devastating intelligence breakdown in modern military history. A systematic failure where German intelligence proved unable to comprehend, believe, or successfully communicate to Nazi leadership the genuine magnitude of American industrial might, ultimately sealing the Third Reich's fate through a catastrophic miscalculation of mathematical certainty. The collapse of German intelligence concerning American manufacturing output had actually started 2 years prior. Back in 1941, Luftwaffe General Karl Kohler had delivered reports to Hermann Göring from military attaché General Friedrich von Bötticher, stationed in Washington, which indicated that American aircraft production was nearing 2,000 planes each month. Göring's response? He actually laughed out loud, insisting that Americans were only capable of manufacturing refrigerators and razor blades, certainly not military aircraft. "The Americans are running a bluff," Göring had confidently told Hitler at the Wolf's Lair in December 1941, just 4 days following Pearl Harbor. "Their democratic system weakens them, their mixed population makes them inefficient, their Jewish influence corrupts them, there's absolutely no way they can produce what they're claiming." By March 1943, German intelligence networks operating throughout the Americas were filing reports of something that completely defied every assumption embedded in Nazi racial theory and economic doctrine. These reports originated from various independent sources: Mexican industrialists who sympathized with Germany, Spanish diplomatic personnel, Swedish businessmen traveling through Detroit, even personal letters intercepted from American workers writing to family members in neutral countries. Every single source reported the same seemingly impossible reality. Ford's Willow Run plant, operating by itself, was producing more heavy bombers than every single one of Germany's aircraft factories combined. Oberstleutnant Nikolaus Ritter, who headed Abwehr's air intelligence section known as Abteilung Luft, had dedicated 3 full weeks to analyzing this data. Ritter, a former Lufthansa pilot who'd actually lived in America for a full decade before the war began, understood American industrial capacity far better than the majority of German officers. During the 1920s, his Manhattan apartment had overlooked the construction site of the Chrysler Building. He'd personally watched Americans erect what became the world's tallest building in under 2 years. "Herr Admiral," Ritter reported to Canaris, his voice heavy with resignation, "if these numbers hold up, and I'm convinced they do, then Germany has already lost this war. At this point, it's simply a matter of mathematics and the passage of time." The intelligence flowed through perilous channels, each route more dangerous than the one before. Georg Nicholas, running Abwehr's primary intelligence network from Mexico City, had carefully cultivated relationships with American businessmen who moved freely between Detroit's factories and Mexico's oil fields. These men casually discussed the miracles they'd witnessed, completely unaware that German agents were transcribing their dinner party conversations word for word. On February 3, 1943, an American oil executive named Harold Morrison attended a social reception at the German-Mexican Commerce Association in Mexico City. After consuming several tequilas, Morrison launched into a detailed description of his recent guided tour of the Willow Run facility, a visit that Ford had arranged to demonstrate to potential investors just how capable the company was of fulfilling massive government contracts. "Gentlemen," Morrison proclaimed, oblivious to the fact that Wolfgang Blau, a German agent masquerading as an Argentine leather merchant, was committing every single word to memory. "What I witnessed there simply defies any adequate description." The assembly line extends over a mile in length. The building itself is so absolutely vast that actual clouds form inside it. Sometimes it literally rains within the factory walls. They've got 42,000 workers on staff, including thousands upon thousands of women, Negro women included, all of them building the most sophisticated machine ever created by human hands. Morrison pulled a pencil from his pocket and started sketching on a cocktail napkin. "This bomber features 2 separate bomb bays, each one capable of holding 4,000 pounds of ordnance. It's powered by 4 engines, each one generating 1,200 horsepower. They manufacture these planes in sections, Ford calls them sub-assemblies, that converge together like multiple rivers flowing into the sea. Wing sections arrive from one direction, fuselages roll in from another, tail assemblies come from a third. Everything meets at precisely calculated points along the production line." Blau had probed further, attempting to maintain his casual tone of interest. But surely such tremendous complexity must result in frequent equipment breakdowns and production delays. Morrison had actually laughed at that suggestion. That's exactly what Consolidated Aircraft thought initially. They openly mocked Ford, insisting you simply can't build airplanes the way you build automobiles. But what Ford did was break down the entire bomber into 60,000 separate, distinct operations. Each worker performs the exact same task repeatedly, over and over. A woman who just yesterday was preparing breakfast for her children is now installing hydraulic lines in the tail section. They train these workers in days, not months. Perhaps the most comprehensive intelligence arrived through Francisco Franco's Spain. Colonel José Ungría, serving as Spanish military attaché in Washington, maintained close professional relationships with American aircraft manufacturers while secretly feeding intelligence to Germany in exchange for tungsten shipments that were absolutely crucial to Spanish industry. In March 1943, Ungría attended a diplomatic reception at the Argentine embassy, where he encountered Charles Sorensen, Ford's production chief, and the brilliant architect behind Willow Run. Sorensen, under the impression he was speaking with a representative from a neutral nation that might purchase aircraft once the war concluded, spoke with remarkable openness about the plant's capabilities. "Colonel," Sorensen had said, completely unaware that his every word would arrive in Berlin within 2 weeks. "When I first toured Consolidated's San Diego plant back in 1940, they were literally building B-24s outdoors in the California sunshine, with each aircraft turning out different from the last one, requiring 180,000 man-hours per aircraft. I knew immediately we could do significantly better." Ungria pressed for additional details, claiming he had professional interest as a military engineer. Sorensen, clearly proud of what he'd accomplished, was happy to elaborate. I spent just one evening in my San Diego hotel room sketching out the complete production flow. We would build bombers using the same method we build cars, not by having teams of workers swarm all over a stationary aircraft, but by moving the aircraft past workers who remain stationary. Each worker would perform specific, defined tasks repeatedly, achieving absolute perfection through constant repetition. The Spanish colonel inquired about the workforce challenges inherent in such complexity. "We constructed an apprentice school that successfully trains 8,000 workers every single week," Sorensen replied enthusiastically. "Women make up 40% of our entire workforce. They're actually superior at detailed work. Smaller hands can access tight spaces more easily, and they demonstrate more patience for repetitive tasks. We have Negro workers operating highly sophisticated machinery. We have 16-year-old boys managing complex supply logistics. You see, democracy ultimately means utilizing every available human resource to its fullest potential." Through Swedish, Argentine, Japanese, and Turkish intelligence channels, German intelligence continued receiving consistent reports that all confirmed Willow Run's extraordinary production rate. Swedish engineer Erik Lundberg visited the plant during March 1943 and filed a report stating, "The plant operates with an efficiency level that completely defies European understanding. They utilize 1,600 specialized machine tools, with many designed to perform single, specific operations. The capital investment is absolutely staggering, perhaps $200 million for tooling alone." Japanese Commander Toshikazu Kase's coded message to Tokyo, which German intelligence successfully intercepted, provided completely independent verification. "This single American factory produces more aircraft each month than our entire Japanese aviation industry combined." By April 1943, German intelligence had compiled comprehensive data from 17 completely independent sources, all confirming the production rate beyond any reasonable doubt. The numbers were absolutely staggering. Willow Run alone was producing 650 B-24s monthly at peak capacity, with total American B-24 production exceeding 1,400 aircraft each month. Desperate to obtain ground-level verification, Canaris authorized Operation Pastorius, the covert insertion of saboteurs into the United States via submarine. George John Dash, who led one of the 2 four-man teams, had actually lived in America for 20 full years before returning to Germany in 1939. His classified orders from Canaris were explicit: gather intelligence on aircraft production capabilities before conducting any sabotage operations whatsoever. In the early morning darkness of June 13, 1942, Dash's team came ashore at Amagansett, Long Island, having departed from U-202 just after midnight. Within mere days, tormented by the implications of his mission, and what he already understood about American capacity, Dash surrendered himself to the FBI. During his intensive interrogation, Dash revealed something that absolutely stunned his American captors. Canaris personally told me that Berlin refuses to believe your production figures. They're convinced Willow Run is nothing but propaganda. He desperately wanted photographs, employee counts, shipping records, concrete proof that would force Goering to finally accept reality. FBI Special Agent Charles Landman asked incredulously, "They genuinely don't believe we're producing a bomber every hour?" Dash laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "Agent Landman, I lived in this country for 2 decades. I've personally seen your automobile factories in operation. I tried explaining to them that if Ford could produce a complete car every single minute before the war started, they could absolutely produce a bomber every hour during wartime. They accused me of being a defeatist." On April 20th, 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Canaris personally presented the accumulated intelligence to Goering at Karenhol, the Reichsmarshal's ostentatious hunting estate located north of Berlin. This meeting would become absolutely legendary among German intelligence officers for Goering's complete and utter rejection of reality. Canaris had brought photographs, intercepted documents, and reports from dozens of different sources. He spread them across Goering's massive oak table like a card dealer revealing a losing hand. "Herr Reichsmarschall," Canaris began carefully, choosing his words with precision, "we have confirmation from 17 completely independent sources. The Ford Willow Run plant is producing 1 B-24 Liberator every single hour at peak production capacity. They've maintained this rate consistently since January." Goering, whose weight had ballooned past 280 pounds by this stage of the war, picked up one of the photographs showing the assembly line stretching endlessly into the distance. "Canaris," Goering said, his voice dripping with contempt, "do you seriously take me for a fool? These are obviously wooden mock-ups, nothing but props created for propaganda purposes. The Americans want us to believe they can manufacture aircraft like they're making sausages. This Willow Run plant probably produces 50 bombers monthly at absolute most." Canaris pulled out yet another document, an intercepted shipping manifest from the Pennsylvania Railroad detailing aluminum deliveries. "Herr Reichsmarschall, they're consuming 16 million pounds of aluminum monthly at this single plant. That exceeds our entire nation's monthly aluminum production." Goering laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "Then where exactly do they obtain this aluminum? From their Negro workers? From their women riveters? Canaris, you've been thoroughly deceived by American propaganda." 1 week later, Canaris received a summons to the Wolf's Lair to brief Hitler personally. The meeting included Generals Alfred Jodl and Wilhelm Keitel, along with Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels. Hitler, deeply absorbed in studying maps of the Eastern Front where the Wehrmacht was preparing for Operation Citadel, the Battle of Kursk, listened with obvious impatience as Canaris presented the intelligence. "Mein Führer," Canaris said, fully aware he was literally risking his life. "If the Americans are indeed producing 1,400 B-24s monthly, plus equivalent numbers of B-17s, plus their fighter aircraft production, plus British production, the aerial bombardment of the Reich will very soon exceed our defensive capabilities entirely." Hitler's response was absolutely characteristic of him. "Admiral, the Americans are certainly capable of mass-producing simple consumer goods, automobiles, refrigerators, but a bomber is not a car. It requires precision engineering, genuine skill, dedicated craftsmanship. When it took us 6 full years to prepare for this war, they claim to have achieved all this in merely 16 months. It's absolutely impossible. General Jodl studied Canaris's compiled figures and began making a calculation. Even if we accept just 1/4 of these figures as remotely accurate. The figures are completely false, Hitler interrupted sharply. The Americans entered this war in December 1941, building this supposedly miraculous factory and achieving this level of production in such a short time frame is utterly impossible. Unknown to Nazi leadership, Canaris had actually obtained film footage showing Willow Run in full operation, acquired through American intelligence contacts operating in Switzerland. The film, smuggled via Spanish diplomatic pouches, showed 5 continuous minutes of the assembly line operating at full capacity. Canaris and his deputy, Hans Oster, watched this film in a locked, secured room deep within Abwehr headquarters. The camera traveled along the entire mile-long assembly line, capturing everything. B-24s in every conceivable stage of construction moved past at a steady, relentless pace. Workers, men, women, black, white, performed their assigned tasks with mechanical precision. A clock visible in several shots definitively confirmed the timing claims. "My God," Oster whispered, his voice barely audible. "It's actually true. All of it." Canaris took out his cigarette lighter and set the film ablaze, watching it burn completely. "We absolutely cannot show them this footage. They would either accuse us of creating fake footage ourselves, or they'd brand us as traitors." In November 1943, German intelligence obtained aerial reconnaissance photographs of Willow Run, taken by a Spanish diplomat. Photo analysts dedicated weeks to meticulously studying these images. Their conclusions were stark. Parking lots contained approximately 12,000 automobiles, clearly indicating 3-shift operations running continuously. Completed B-24s were clearly visible at the adjacent airfield, 47 aircraft sitting ready for delivery. The assembly line was partially visible through the building skylights, with aircraft spaced exactly as all the reports had indicated. Rail sightings showed dozens upon dozens of freight cars actively delivering raw materials. Oberst Hermann Baun wrote in his analysis, "Photographic evidence completely confirms all human intelligence gathered. Production rate appears entirely accurate. Strongly recommend immediate strategic reassessment of our position." When Goering was shown these aerial photographs, he dismissively waved them away as clever American photographic manipulation, likely created using scale models. Dr. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, and the only Nazi leader with genuine practical understanding of industrial production, secretly obtained copies of the American intelligence. His diary entry for May 15, 1943, discovered after the war ended, reveals his complete despair. If the Willow Run figures are even half accurate, we're facing not mere defeat, but total annihilation. They're producing more aircraft in a single month than we produce in an entire year. But I cannot speak this truth aloud. To do so would be signing my own death warrant. Dr. Otto Ohlendorf, who headed SD Inland and held training as a professional economist, conducted a thorough analysis of American economic data. His report to Himmler in December 1943 was absolutely stark in its conclusions. The Ford Motor Company's peacetime production in 1941 totaled 1.1 million vehicles. They have now converted this massive capacity to bomber production. At current rates, by June 1944, the Americans will have produced enough B-24s alone to drop the equivalent of our entire 1940 London bombing tonnage every single day. On Christmas Eve 1943, Canaris received intelligence documents showing American production projections for 1944, 18,000 B-24 Liberators, 12,000 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 1,000 B-29 Superfortresses, 40,000 fighter aircraft, totaling 86,000 aircraft for a single year. Hitler's response when these figures were presented to him: the Americans are claiming they'll produce more aircraft in 1944 than all nations combined have produced throughout all of recorded history. It's completely absurd. By February 1944, Canaris was removed from his position, suspected of defeatism and potential treason. His replacement, Walter Schellenberg, was a devoted Nazi loyalist who would never dare contradict either Hitler or Göring. But physical reality couldn't be ignored forever. On February 20th, 1944, during what became known as Big Week, the American 8th Air Force launched Operation Argument, sending over 1,000 heavy bombers against German aircraft manufacturing facilities. In just 6 days, they dropped more total bomb tonnage than the Luftwaffe had dropped on Britain during the entire Blitz campaign. Luftwaffe fighter pilot Adolf Galland told Göring directly, "Herr Reichsmarschall, I've personally counted over 800 bombers in a single formation. These planes are absolutely real, and they're dropping very real bombs on us." On June 6, 1944, more than 11,000 Allied aircraft appeared over France for the D-Day invasion. The Luftwaffe could muster fewer than 300 fighters in response. Field Marshal Hugo Sperle sent a desperate message back to Berlin. "The enemy's aerial superiority is absolute and total. Our intelligence was correct all along. We weren't deceived by the Americans. We deceived ourselves." By April 1944, Willow Run achieved its absolute peak production rate. That month, employees working 2 9-hour shifts across 6 days per week produced 453 complete airplanes in 468 hours, a production rate that equaled one finished B-24 Liberator rolling off the line every 63 minutes. The plant employed 42,131 workers total, including 11,000 women, representing 26% of the workforce, 3,800 African Americans, 9% of the workforce, and 1,200 disabled workers, 3% of the workforce. This demographic breakdown would have completely shattered Nazi racial ideology at its very foundation. The supposedly inferior races and weaker sex were outproducing the German master race by multiple orders of magnitude. After the war concluded, surviving German intelligence officers revealed the complete scope of this catastrophic failure. Walter Schellenberg testified at the Nuremberg trials. "We knew the absolute truth about American production capacity by early 1943. Every single professional intelligence officer understood that the numbers were entirely accurate. But to actually report this truth meant risking immediate execution for defeatism," Hans Bernd Gisevius wrote in his post-war memoirs. "The real tragedy wasn't that we lacked intelligence about American production capabilities. We were absolutely drowning in accurate intelligence. The genuine tragedy was that our leadership categorically refused to believe it, because accepting it would have contradicted their entire racial ideology. The German intelligence officers who courageously tried to report the truth paid an extraordinarily heavy price. Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was executed on April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg concentration camp. Hans Oster was executed on April 9, 1945, at Flossenburg concentration camp. Alexis von Roene was executed in October 1944 for his involvement in the July 20th assassination plot. Hans Bernd Gisevius managed to escape to Switzerland and survived the war. The United States Strategic Bombing Survey definitively confirmed everything that German intelligence had originally reported. Willow Run produced 8,685 B-24s between 1942 and 1948. Peak production reached 650 aircraft monthly. The hourly production rate was sustained consistently for months at a time. Total cost per aircraft dropped dramatically from $238,000 down to just $137,000. Albert Speer, during his post-war interrogation, was asked directly why Germany refused to believe the intelligence about American production. His answer was revealing. To accept that Ford could produce a bomber every single hour meant accepting that our entire worldview was fundamentally wrong. That democracy wasn't a weakness but actually a strength. That racial mixing didn't create inefficiency, but rather created strength. That women could perform men's work effectively. It would have meant accepting that we had initiated a war we could never possibly win. Who was going to tell Hitler that uncomfortable truth? Roswell Monroe, the real-life inspiration behind Rosie the Riveter, operated a rivet gun on the B-24 production line. She, along with thousands of women just like her, had never worked in any industrial setting before Pearl Harbor happened. We all knew we were building something genuinely important, Monroe said during a 1984 interview, decades later. Every single rivet we drove was going to help end this war sooner. Sometimes we worked double shifts, literally sleeping in the parking lot between shifts. We had brothers, husbands, sweethearts, who were flying these very planes we were building. The failure to believe accurate intelligence about Willow Run had absolutely catastrophic consequences across multiple areas. Fighter production priorities. Germany continued producing bombers until late 1944 instead of focusing on fighters for defense. Resource allocation disasters. Precious resources were wasted on experimental wonder weapons instead of practical defensive measures. Strategic planning failures. Military operations were planned assuming they'd face hundreds of bombers, not thousands. Diplomatic failures. Peace overtures were delayed because leadership didn't grasp the certainty of their defeat. German economists analyzing captured American documents after the war realized the true scale of what they'd faced. Willow Run cost $200 million to build and equip. Germany's entire aircraft industry investment from 1933 to 1945 totaled roughly $400 million equivalent. Willow Run's floor space covered 3.5 million square feet. All German aircraft factories combined totaled only 8 million square feet. Willow Run's electrical consumption reached 2.5 million kilowatts monthly. The Americans had constructed a single factory that consumed more resources than entire German cities. The final accounting revealed the full scope once the war ended. Total B-24s produced worldwide 18,188 aircraft, with Willow Run building 8,685 of them. Total B-17s produced 12,131 aircraft. Total American aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945, 324,517 aircraft. Total German aircraft produced from 1940 to 1945, 94,700 aircraft. The United States produced 3.2 times more aircraft than Germany, while simultaneously fighting a two-ocean war. Military historians now classify the German intelligence failure regarding American production as one of the most consequential intelligence failures in all of military history. It wasn't a failure of intelligence collection whatsoever. German agents had gathered accurate, detailed, comprehensive intelligence. It was fundamentally a failure of acceptance. Leadership absolutely refusing to believe intelligence that contradicted their deeply held worldview. Dr. Gerhard Weinberg, the distinguished historian, concluded, German intelligence accurately assessed American production capacity by early 1943. Had this intelligence been believed and actually acted upon? Germany might have sought peace terms 2 full years earlier, potentially saving millions of lives. This historical story carries several profound lessons for any generation. Cognitive bias in action. Accurate intelligence can be completely rejected when it contradicts fundamental core beliefs. Ideological blindness. Political ideology can override clear mathematical reality. Systemic failure patterns. Intelligence systems that punish unwelcome truth will inevitably receive comfortable lies instead. Fatal miscalculation. Systematically underestimating your opponents leads inevitably to catastrophic errors. At the 1985 dedication ceremony of the Yankee Air Museum at the old Willow Run site, former Rosie the Riveter, Roswell Monroe, met former Luftwaffe pilot Hans-Ulrich Rudel face to face. Rudel asked her directly, "How did you Americans build so many aircraft so incredibly fast?" Monroe answered simply, "Honey, we just went to work every single day and did our jobs. Nothing fancy about it. Just punch in, build bombers, punch out. Democracy isn't complicated. It's just free people doing their absolute best." Rudel responded quietly, "We were repeatedly told that democracy made you weak, that your diversity made you inefficient. We were fed lies, and those lies ended up killing millions of people." In the ruins of Berlin during May 1945, American intelligence officers discovered one final German intelligence report about Willow Run, dated April 20th, 1945, Hitler's final birthday. It read, "Willow Run production rate confirmed beyond all doubt. We reported this exact truth 2 full years ago. We were not believed then. Germany is dying now not from any lack of intelligence gathering, but from a complete lack of wisdom to believe intelligence that contradicts what we desperately wished to be true. Let future generations learn this lesson well. Reality does not bend to accommodate ideology. Mathematics does not yield to mythology. Truth that is ignored inevitably becomes tragedy." The report was never actually delivered to anyone. By that point, Hitler was trapped in his underground bunker, and the so-called 1,000-year Reich had mere days left to exist. Thousands of American bombers, many of them built at Willow Run, were delivering the final argument that German intelligence had desperately tried to make 2 years earlier. The verdict of history is crystal clear on this matter. German intelligence gathering was genuinely excellent and professional. German intelligence acceptance was absolutely catastrophic. In that fundamental failure to believe uncomfortable truths lies a powerful warning for all nations throughout time. Physical reality doesn't care one bit what you choose to believe. Those who deny reality in favor of comforting ideology will ultimately be destroyed by that very reality. Willow Run built far more than just bombers during those war years. It built definitive proof that democracy actually works, that diversity genuinely strengthens, that freedom truly produces results. German spies meticulously counted every single aircraft produced. German leaders believed absolutely none of it, and that willful disbelief killed the Third Reich just as surely as any bomb ever could.